casually whilst I talk with my good friend here, John Blood. Today's conversation is going to be branching out, going a billion different ways, and that's okay. But the central principle I want to use as kind of a magnet to get back on topic later is, should the Elder Scrolls be rebooted? This is a question that's been asked to me tons of times. It's kind of a big deal to some people because the lore is wildly inconsistent, and in order to make the lore make sense, ultimately they go and they grab bits and pieces of information from people who don't work for Bethesda anymore. That's what the community does. The community is desperate to make sense of this stuff, and so they've created this idea that their lore is open sourced only because Bethesda can't make their own canon make sense, and I don't think Bethesda cares about making their canon make sense. That's my point of view on it, and the chat is now hailing John Blood. John, what do you have to say about this?
Well, hail right back at ya.
There we go. And your thoughts on the concept that the Elder Scrolls should be rebooted?
Well, I don't really know. Maybe it should be rebooted, but then again, knowing Bethesda, would that really be a good thing?
Okay, so we're falling into this. This is kind of how do I put this? Bethesda now is not the same Bethesda that made Arena, and the same Bethesda that made Arena and Daggerfall is not the same Bethesda that made Oblivion, and so on and so forth. And that is something we're going to have to, talk about for sure. The idea that the Elder Scrolls itself, how do I put this? It's, do we like the direction they're going? And to quite a few people, the answer is yes, yes, and yes. They absolutely love Skyrim to death, and they wouldn't want to go back to what older games represent. And I think that, you have to ask yourself, what about the Elder Scrolls do you like? And I think the answer will change depending on who you ask. So,
Yep.
What to you, John, is is what makes you love the Elder Scrolls?
Well, personally, what makes the Elder Scrolls lore great to me is it started to peak for me around Morrowind.
Mm-hmm.
When all of this high fantasy and this kind of alien kind of high fantasy started to enter into lore. That's when I began to get interested in it, and it's quite sad looking at it now that a lot of those lore concepts that were present in Morrowind had either been downplayed or toned down significantly.
Yeah, I would say so. I think back to the what was the game? I'm trying to okay, so Oblivion was really the turning point where Todd Howard said he wanted to get back to the quote unquote series roots in terms of, get away from Morrowind. Like it's clear Todd Howard wasn't a fan of the the alien concept in it, and yet you can see the way they made an expansion pack to Skyrim that panders to Morrowind. Soulstime. They added Morrowind concepts from it. Same thing with the I'm trying to remember what it's called now. The Elder Scrolls Online. The ZeniMax Online Studios is pandering currently. But I think that's really what they're doing is, the Elder Scrolls in the first two were, experiments for them to try to understand what they were doing. The first one, what I'm playing now, is an unpolished piece of crap. I say that as I fight off a horde of rats sitting on a little pedestal, You know, but yeah, there's if I look at the Daggerfall is when it peaked, or should I say when they finally figured out what they wanted to do. They just hadn't refined the technology, and then they went searching for alternative styles in which to make their game.
Yeah, Daggerfall's lore and the kind of fantasy it is involved with, it's very traditional, I should say.
Exactly, and Morrowind is, as you called it, alien. And I think that they did that to differentiate it, to separate it. But you can tell because Todd Howard in the Oblivion, E3 demo, he said, like, this is a return to the series' roots. He meant it as in back to traditional fantasy. And you can see that with Oblivion, at least the way, it's just European fantasy. It's even more streamlined than Daggerfall was. Daggerfall had some fantastical elements in it. Whereas, I don't want to call it homogenized, but that's really what I get from Oblivion, is just very simplified.
Yeah, instead of, exactly returning back to its roots, I should say, it pretty much began to water down the lore and to try to force the old lore to fit together like these grotesque fucking puzzle pieces. It's like Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
This whole compilation of lore.
Yeah.
Things that don't really fit together.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. I actually really liked the Oblivion experience, and that's where it changes. Because Arena, despite having, hilarious, unpolished gameplay systems, I really did like the concept of Arena if it were just done better. And Daggerfall, same thing. Hilarious, unpolished gameplay systems. But again, the storyline and the scope and scale was amazing. Whereas Morrowind was the great compromise. They still had writers on staff. They still, and they reached for something that was different. Come Oblivion, though, I think they started to focus on cinematic storytelling over the actual, overarching story. They wanted you to feel it in the moment. And I think that's where we're getting our word immersion from. Yeah. The cinematic storytelling, the being there in the moment, not your not controlling a character, but rather being that character.
Yeah, it started to become what was the word? Power fantasy?
Power fantasy. Well, it's always been power fantasy, to be fair, but there I would say that there are different levels of power fantasy. And that it's not all just under one moniker.
Yeah.
They, people in the chat are asking, like, why do people hate Skyrim so much? Why is there so much Skyrim hate? And that's because Skyrim ultimately, I see a rat there, damn it. I was going to say that Skyrim took the concepts from the other stories. There's another rat. And they essentially dumbed it down. So if you are more story orientated, then you see massive amounts of missing potential where the old games could have been. However, if you entered the series at Skyrim, then you wouldn't understand that, because what you came for is that in the moment cinematic storytelling, that where you are your character, you are overpowered, you are cool, you are awesome, and that stands in sharp contrast to what fans of the more classic games wanted, at least in the beginning. Now people's tastes change over time, so I'm not saying that no one has converted and become the biggest Skyrim fan ever. That's entirely possible. But I think that the main issue is that people don't, they can't get in each other's headspace, period. Like, that's where this disconnect in the community comes from. Like, yeah, it's a difference in value systems. What I value is not what they value. Go on.
Yeah, the way I break down the reason that why some people hate Skyrim, for instance, the reason I bought Skyrim and the reason I played Skyrim is because I expected Skyrim to be on the similar kind of scope and scale, like it's in Arena, and like the culture would be reflected as it's written in the lore in Morrowind and
indeed,
Daggerfall.
the Skald King is pleased by your sacrifice.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But none of that exists in Skyrim as the mainstream culture in the game of the citizens in Skyrim. But instead, all of that is pretty much what the bandits are all about in Skyrim.
Yes. No, I made that that was originally a joke that I made. And I ran with the joke. Like, that the bandits are the indigenous culture that has escaped imperialization. That was that was just it was a joke, and yet the pieces fit together too well because of the broken game mechanics. And the only reason the bandits are the biggest population is because of of the game mechanics. That's why. So
yeah, yeah, but the joke actually it has a ring of truth to it. It feels like that's actually the case.
Yeah. And I think that if they were going to go in that direction, instead of a head nod or a little reference here or there, they could actually, make it a core storytelling principle. I mean, we had The Witcher was taking the piss out of Skyrim with what was the Scovos?
I've not played enough Witcher 3 to know that reference.
Yeah. Well, there's a particular island where a good chunk of the main quest takes place, but it is it is very Norse, and it is what Skyrim should have been. So that's the Skellig. Thank you, Skellig. And that was the area. So,
okay, someone called Blue Pons Gaming asked, "Do you have faith in Test 6?" Short answer: no.
I don't have faith in it, but I have a kind of optimism that other people wouldn't necessarily understand, and I'm willing to give it a try.
Well, if we're going to be realistic, honestly, without taking the piss here, the Elderscrolls 6 is probably going to have a lot of mechanics taken straight up from Fallout 4.
Yeah.
It was the case with Fallout 3. A lot of the mechanics were originally from Oblivion.
Yeah, you're right. You are absolutely correct. And I don't know how better to say that. So that always begs the question. People ask me, should the Elder Scrolls be rebooted? And you answered it with, do you trust Bethesda as it is now to do that? And the answer is no. And I don't like the Bethesda hate circle jerk. Like, oh my God, they're terrible. Well, they weren't. Here's the thing. I love the developers that made Daggerfall. There's several stories that were running around the internet, and I didn't really get to give them the research they deserved, but apparently, Ted Pedersen, the guy who did Daggerfall, he was the creative lead, and he used to post on the Bethesda forums under the name Sheogorath. And apparently, like, Shivering Isles, for what people have told me at least, again, there are so many rumors that I've actually been able to speak to employees about. No one wants to talk about Ted for some reason, but a fan posted to me a conversation regarding it, where it pretty much boiled down to like, Ted saw Sheogorath as like a Hannibal Lecter type character, like but a guy who can be helpful but will totally backstab you and see you dead just because he's insane. And they turned him into the cheese for everyone guy that everyone loves. And it's not just the fact that Todd, because apparently it was Todd's ideas, like, that made Sheogorath what he is now. Apparently he butchered the, it's not that he butchered Sheogorath, it's that everyone loved the butchered version. That's what really got to him. Is that, hell, I love the new Sheogorath. He's just so insane. He's the PewDiePie of the Elderscrolls world, I would say. PewDiePie's a clown. That's what he's been for years. Now he's growing out of that, sure, but my point in this is that like, Ted apparently, again, I haven't been able to confirm this because nobody wants to talk about it, but apparently Ted was offended by that whole thing and he stopped posting on the Elder Scrolls community boards. Of course, Bethesda actually nuked those boards. They don't exist anymore, which is sad. Yeah. The old Bethesda forums are gone now.
Oh, that's too bad, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of history, especially during, Daggerfall Morrowind time. People don't realize how much community interaction the old developers had, and how much they based their stuff off of the community. That's why when there's this grand argument that, the lore has always been community sourced, there is a grain of truth in there. Although it's, always been tempered by what the developers wanted. It has, like, they have taken suggestions and ideas from the community, and that's why the series went in the direction it did. At least up until... Yeah, go on.
I guess you could say that the lore originally, it was authored by the player base and the beta testers, and the developers acted like the editors. Okay,
absolutely.
You can keep this idea, nuke that, change that just a little bit, and then put it in the game.
Exactly. And I think it's because it's a completely different culture, Bethesda's corporate culture changed a lot. I talk about corporate culture quite a bit when I discuss both Valve and I discuss Blizzard, because I was actually privy to quite a bit with those two companies. People don't realize, despite the fact I play Elder Scrolls games the most, I actually have the smallest amount of insight into how those games were made. It's always been discussions with former developers and with other people that have given me that insight as to what was going on, with Bethesda. And it isn't the same with, Blizzard and Valve, where I had a literal pipeline to what was going on in those companies in real time and how they changed over time. So, yeah, it's I can speak with pretty good authority on Valve and Blizzard, but Bethesda, it's like I'm making guesses all the time. I have to go and talk to people. Again, nobody wants to talk about Ted Peterson, the former creative lead like the guy who made Daggerfall what it was, and that makes me sad because I want to know the story.
Blue Phones Gaming again asked a question that's a good segue to the topic here. What do you guys find most important in an Elder Scrolls game?
Okay. Well, I honestly, I wouldn't have played Skyrim or Oblivion if this wasn't true. And I'm going to say it right now, is the world itself. Bethesda actually, the modding community fixes a lot of those problems, but the sandbox itself is where I find value in an Elder Scrolls game, and that's why, while other people hate Skyrim or love Skyrim, or they hate Morrowind or love Morrowind, I love all of these games because of their world, and I think the world is what's most important. It's funny because I look at it, and I think that I look at the missing potential in the stories, and I say, well, damn, if you could have just done this, it would have been better. If you could have done that, it would have been better. You all realize that my What If Skyrim Was Good is actually What If Skyrim Was Better. I don't actually hate the game, but I will continue to use that series title because I feel that it is rage-inducing in fans, and I enjoy that. So, yeah, it's, R.I.P. Rad Jesus. Oh my. Okay. But, yeah, I just think the gameplay has to be good in a video game. Like, that's what a lot of people don't understand, who obsess about story, is the gameplay has to be good, and if it isn't, then the game has failed at being a game. And if you can have the best story in the world in a game, but if it can't if it's not a good game, it's not a good game. The funny part is you look at people, who will go, well, you see, it couldn't have had these gameplay or these changes because then the game would suck. Are you sure? Let's look at The Witcher. Let's look at all these other games and compare them, see how they work.
Yeah, you actually summed up my input that I was about to say. Very good there. That you could have the best story written up in the world, but if you can't make the gameplay loop enjoyable, you have failed as a game designer.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And when it comes down to whether or not the Elder Scrolls should be rebooted, and this comes back to trust in Bethesda, because I personally do not trust Bethesda to actually do it competently or in a way that is, how should I put it, faithful to the spirit of the entire franchise.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I think that if they did reboot it right now, it would be done in the vein of Skyrim, and we'd end up with a Dragon Age-like game. With a quote-unquote epic story that, where you're saving the world, which is fine, but it would be done on, you are the legendary hero with the particle effect on your hand, and because you have the particle effect on your hand, you are the legendary hero. Like, but he doesn't have any competence. Doesn't matter. The particle effect on his hand means he's the legendary hero. That's what Dragon Age Inquisition boiled down to. It wasn't.
Yeah, you're basically spoon-fed the important role instead of earning it.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's interesting how the series, could have been done well. You said, okay, someone said it's not correct. Redguard and Morrowind were done largely by the same people. Hawkeye, the Fifth Empire. Okay, hold on a second. Redguard and Morrowind were done by, yes, the same people, but those people were not the, like, how do I put this? The input they had on Battlespire was insignificant. And the actual people who made Redguard were not, like, the writers of Morrowind are the writers of, it's called Redguard, but no. I'm reading this comment here, and you're a little off on that, you know. It's the Oblivion was a reboot, and Skyrim was another. That's not exactly true. ESO is the post-reboot one. Oh my.
Oh my god, just thinking about that makes
Yeah, that is atrocious. That is absolutely that is offensive. Honestly, the idea that they rebooted it and told nobody, and then after telling no one that they rebooted it, they went back to ESO and they started using the rebooted continuity. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if Schick is to be believed, then ESO is the real world of Temria.
Mm-hmm.
And the main Tower series is just
No,
legend.
that is, you know, offense is taken, not given. Keep that in mind. So I'm taking offense by your statement. You know, but yeah, it's something that you're not sure they told nobody from. It wouldn't have been the Elderscrolls 4 then. It would have been the Elderscrolls. You see, it would have been a Doom situation here. No. It's like a Beyond Good and Evil 2. Like it's that level of egregiousness. Beyond Good and Evil 2 is going to be set before Beyond Good and Evil. It's going to be procedurally generated. It's going to have a character you can create, and yeah, what does it have to do with Beyond Good and Evil? Absolutely nothing. You don't know where they told nobody? Holy shit. What's wrong with you? It's that level of egregiousness. Like, I would go up to the person who made that executive decision, and I would challenge them to a fist fight. And when they when they declined, I would call them a shit pussy in their face, and then walk away. You know, that is just absolutely egregious.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I mean, it is that bad. Okay, randomly generated dungeon time. Let's go.
Okay, someone here asks, would you rather have ESO or Coda?
No. Okay, let's be serious here. At least ESO has an authoritative statement behind it. It may not be going in the direction I want, but at least you can say with a measure of authority that this is this and this is that. Maybe I don't like the way it's written. Maybe I wouldn't play it. But I already don't subscribe to Coda. Skeleton just murdered me. But yeah, I honestly, I don't subscribe to the idea of Coda, and I currently am not subscribed to ESO. So, you know, which would you rather have? I would say ESO only by the virtue that I could then write off the Elderscrolls is lost. You know?
Yep.
Alright. Move on to the next thing. Oh my. Why have Coda when you could have soda? Absolutely. No. Khan and I were discussing this earlier. I mentioned just earlier the concept of Kirkbradian lore. It was in my my Jackass to Comments video, which I have quite a bit of pride in. But in my Jackass to Comments video, I explained that you know, like the Kirkbradian lore stands in sharp contrast to the canon lore, And Khan said, well, that sounds a lot better than Coda, at least, because with Coda, people are trying to say with authority that this is the, the end of, all lore. It is the, the beginning and the end, and just, like, this is everything. Whereas Kirkbridean puts it into context, and because it puts into context, no one would dare, no one would dare use it. It's, interesting. You're right. Yeah. The only game where the events are fixed in Elder Scrolls lore is Arena. Talon is the eternal champion. Yeah, Talon. Talon, the leader of the Imperial Guard, who was trapped in Oblivion as well. They retconned him to be the eternal champion. Yeah, Talon was actually stuck in the same plane of Oblivion in Arena.
He was?
Yeah. Someone asked, does Coda stand for something? Alright, so if you replace the 0 with an actual O, then it's a coda, as in a musical performance or a play. You would have a radical tone change at the end of your performance. Like, imagine if you had all this crazy shit happen, and like like people were losing their minds over, just what's going on? I don't understand. And suddenly you had a tone shift, and you calmed everyone down, and you said, it was only a Midsummer Night's Dream. That would be an example of a coda. In a musical performance, it means something different. You would change the tone of the music. But you see what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, a coda in writing, it's basically just a radical shift.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I'm in a maze. I didn't... why did they make a maze? I have doomed myself. The Eternal Champion died in a hedge maze. But yeah. Exactly, in music the coda is the closing pace. And yeah, there's usually a tone shift in that. Alright. Let's see here. If Bethesda continues the pattern, Elder Scrolls 6 may be nothing but a creation kit. No, a creation kit and an open world. There might not be anything in the world. There might be, like, randomly generated monsters. And the idea is you are supposed to go and kill those monsters. And then get crafting components. And when you do that, you will... you'll be able to build your settlements and stuff. And then, like, random events will happen based on your built settlements. And then, settlers will just show up. And that's what Elder Scrolls 6, by your logic, would be. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying by the logic you presented to me. Because they would not release a game that's just a creation kit. But they would. They definitely would create something that is... very, very hilarious. I could see that happening where it's just, we built the systems, now you build the world.
Yes.
Alright.
Elder Scrolls 6, you build the game to your desires.
Yes. Alright. This has a dragon and it says in, so what's the randomly generated name going to be? Ah, the Dancing Eagle, which makes a lot of sense. Alright. Sadly, there's a possibility that the aesthetic and the atmosphere of ESO going forward will be the norm in the Elder Scrolls franchise after the Legends decide to adopt their aesthetics. I don't really mind the aesthetics of Elder Scrolls Online. I mind that they claim to show the whole land of Tamriel, and then there's no unique cultures there. And people will be like, what are you talking about? There's a king, and there's royal guards, and there's peasants. Yeah, and how does their government function? The king tells the peasants what to do? Okay. There is They built a world and they claimed it to be the complete section of the world, but we all know that it's just a representation in the story, and that's where my joke with the bandits came in. Was, ultimately, the games are all just representations of the story because, like, none of these places could function as they are, and based on their size, cultural drift would have consumed the countries completely, all of them. They would all just be the imperial culture or the, whatever is the dominant culture. It would have just swept over the entire world and taken it over by now.
Yeah. My problem with ESO in terms of the world specifically, it's, the world kind of feels like it's hollow. It has the aesthetics.
Well, that's inherent in MMO design, though. We all acknowledged when we first played ESO that ZeniMax Online Studios was an MMO shop and not a full-on, single-player game creation studio. Whether you wanted to believe that or not, you have to accept that MMOs come inherent in them with huge sacrifices in order to create their quote-unquote single-player in multiplayer story. Your actions have to have no greater influence on the world that can't be just undone in a second. Because once you get out of your phase or your instance or whatever, the world has to be exactly the same as when you stepped into it. Otherwise, like, people would walk around, they'd see different NPCs in different places. They'd see, a destroyed section of a city where the one was completely, solid. World of Warcraft played with phasing, where, the player would slowly build up, like, Argent Crusade fortifications in Icecrown, the actual zone of Icecrown. And so, when a new player came into Icecrown, they'd go up to their friend, and their friend would be standing in the middle of a field with ghouls all around, and the ghouls would be ignoring their friend. And then they just pounce the shit all over the new guy. He's like, what the hell's going on? How are you just standing there? Well, it's because in my version, I have a fortress of the Argent Crusade, and it's right here. Wait, what? That's why they couldn't do it. It didn't work. And that's why, after the alpha testing of phasing, they made it so that the players actually disappear. So, you would go to where your friend is and you wouldn't even see him anymore. Because otherwise, they'd be confused why certain NPCs wouldn't be seen by some players, would be seen by others. And, the status quo can never change in an MMO. It just can't. And if it does change, it has to change for everybody. And that's why you'll find MMOs like EVE Online, for instance, are good examples of sandboxes. Whereas MMOs that are using the EverQuest formula, which is the theme park, because there's sandbox MMOs like Star Wars Galaxies, like EVE Online, like Asheron's Call, and there's theme park ones like EverQuest, and then EverQuest successors like World of Warcraft and ESO that all use this, you are the hero. You must do this task. Go do the next task. Go do the next task. Go do the next task. And that guided progression through the world, that theme park experience. Oh, you finished the Mount Doom ride. Well, now it's time for you to go on the log jammer. Yes, you will have to go fight through this lumber mill. But my point is, there's a reason why ESO is the way it is, and it will never have any value because it has to both be a single-player story, but it has to water down that single-player story so it never fixes anything. Like, nothing changes. You save the King of Daggerfall, there's still Bloodthorn assassins around.
Yeah. But what I meant it feeling, like an empty shell is because it has the aesthetics, but, the culture around different parts of Tamriel, like the Bretons, they have this whole concept of the meritocracy that one can at one point of their life be a peasant and then rise up to become a goddamn king in Daggerfall.
Yeah.
And none of that kind of how should I put it? That kind of ambition to rise up the ladder in society is actually present in it, in ESO.
Yeah.
The cultural identity of every single province, it's flattened. It's very two-dimensional.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's see here. All right. Yeah, someone mentioned the Bard's College, where you do 3 fetch quests. Yes, the Bard's College.
The Bard's College was the most infuriating faction in the game.
I don't understand why you couldn't be a bard and do bard stuff. I mean,
because speechcraft is no longer relevant.
Yeah. It's interesting. Speechcraft, or should I say the speech skill, or by Fallout 4, it was the charisma stat. It actually had more value in that game than it did in Skyrim.
Yeah, it did.
And that's kind of funny.
Wasn't there like these entire dialogue checks based on those stats specifically?
Yeah, based on how high your stats were, it would you'd have either a chance at getting it a success, or you'd have a guaranteed success if you had it high enough. So I always got a suit. I'd always I'd use Armorsmith Extended so I could wear the suit underneath my, like all my modular armor. And I'd wear the suit so that I could always get my skill check successes. So. Broke into somebody's junky wilderness house. Alright. Let's see here. If you go off D&D Bard, they have to play music when they fight. Yes. Okay. Neverwinter Nights, everybody. Attack! I said attack! Back to wherever. I will overcome.
It's kind of funny that in Skyrim, it's only after the release of the Dragonborn DLC was when the game actually had a power specifically that was themed after, the Bard playstyle. You can summon the Spectral Drum, which buffs your allies.
Oh, that's neat. I completely forgot about the Spectral Drum. I was using the in Ordinator. They actually have it's an overhaul for Skyrim. They have an Earthshaker drum that you can use if you've leveled your speechcraft enough. The Earthshaker drum allows you to trying to remember what it was called. It basically creates an earthquake which stuns enemies. It's kind of neat. But yeah, there's. I would say that the guy who developed the guy who developed Ordinator, Apocalypse, Aurora, Imperius, all those mods, he worked so hard and he gets so little credit for it. Did you hear the rumors that Arthmore got rejected from the Creation Club?
No. What the hell is up with that?
Well, apparently, he had an attitude. And, his blind loyalty toward, this is going to be the salvation of paid mods, is going to be the salvation of modders, and blah, 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 blah. All of that, where he actually, I believe that he built a reputation for himself that got him rejected. Also, he did, he made sweeping changes to the game, which, in his unofficial patches, which kind of puts, Bethesda in a tough spot, because some of those things, I think everything in his unofficial patches were good. I think he outdid himself with his unofficial patches. But I think that some of those changes maybe weren't Bethesda's intended changes. Yeah. Ultimately, what they wanted was Eleonora and Trainwiz. That's what they wanted. They wanted house mods, and they wanted... Whoops. Screwed that up. Yeah, they wanted house mods, and they wanted, like little... like 3D models and, like things like that.
Basically, they wanted something that they could put as, like, treat like microtransactions, basically.
Exactly. That's what the Creation Club is. It's microtransactions. It's no more or less than microtransactions. So.
I'm getting a whole vibe I got from the Crown Store from ESO.
Yes, exactly. That's what it is. And I guarantee you that Bethesda Game Studios, the people who worked on the first worked on Skyrim itself, they are not the people who worked on the special edition. And furthermore, they are not the people who will be working on this new Creation Club store. It's going to be Bethesda Softworks, the publisher that'll be divvying out that sort of thing. And there's no in between about that. Like the creators whom people think, oh, they're going to be doing, they're going to be working on my thing. No, they're not. Like the actual people, the actual creative minds have nothing to do with this. This is an executive decision to make monies.
Yeah. Getting back on rails on the topic, what do you think, where would you pinpoint Elderscrolls lore going a bit haywire with the rewrites and retcons and
honestly,
going with the unreliable narrator kind of crap?
What broke the lore was the warp in the West, and it's because they were too namby-pamby to actually say this is what happened at the end of Daggerfall. They wanted to create a new continuity with all the changes, and so that's what they did.
Yeah, that was I actually thought the same thing, because Diablo could have also had the very same problem. But instead of being all namby-pamby about it, they said, oh, the canon ending was the warrior.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, and they also said, the rogue, she failed in her mission, and she became Bloodraven, one of the bosses in Diablo 2.
Yeah.
That was what they did. So, yeah.
Yeah, and here comes Bethesda. Oh, all of the 8? Was there 8?
Let's see. Okay, we got the King of Worms ending, the Orsinium ending, the I'm getting stabbed in the back by something ending. Let's see here. Hold on. Okay. Sorry, the Orsinium ending, King of Worms ending, Wayrest, Daggerfall, Sentinel, Wayrest, Daggerfall, Sentinel, Blades. So we got 6. Underking ending, 7. I think that's it. I'm probably missing one. Oh well.
7 endings, at least.
Yeah, at least 7 endings.
All of these 7 endings are canon at the same time. And now there's contradictions. Manimarco is both a god and a immortal lich.
Yeah, but the thing is, they decided to, in Oblivion, to just have you go and kill Manimarco. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Shit. All right. Well, this is pretty impressive. Let's see. Yeah, 7 endings. And it's funny because there isn't much between them either. As endings, I mean. Like, they didn't accomplish... yes, one country dominated, and the other, Daggerfall, Sentinel, and Wayrest fell, blah, blah, blah. A new homeland is carved out in Orsinium, and no one can dispute Gorthrog's claim to Orcish equality. So on and so
Yeah,
forth.
Smith Productions, when you say 7 endings, it's really easier if you think about it like this. You basically just take a single MacGuffin to one of 7 or 8 people, and then the ending slice that you get and the narration just is different.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an epilogue. That's actually that is what it is. It's just an epilogue that changes. And it's not even, you get a couple pages of a book that look different. Because according to the lore, or according to the in-game story, you are reading the Book of Fate to determine what has been written in the Elderscrolls. And you're like, wait a second. They don't write anything in the Elderscrolls. Well, tell that to Daggerfall.
And tell that to Oblivion, because Martin Septim's narration in that says, when the new Elder Scrolls is written, you shall be its scribe.
Yeah. So, yeah, the concept of what an Elder Scroll is, it changes. Like, originally it was just some guy who went, the Elder Scrolls sounds like a cool name, because they don't want it to be an arena fighter anymore. They changed their mind. It's not an arena fighter. So.
Oh, no. Someone in the chat said, I thought the Dragon Break was the thing that broke the law. No, you don't understand. The Warp in the West exactly describes... that's the name of the event. That was
the Dragon Break, yeah. They call it the Warp in the West. Like, the Miracle of Peace. They call it all these things, but it caused massive problems for the storytelling. And, but don't you understand? We're free to pull whatever interpretation we want out of it. We're free!
Yeah, you're free, and your compass in terms of writing direction is fucking spinning.
Yeah. What it really comes down to is the story has lost its value as a result. If it has value to you, congratulations, but... there's a reason why stories are told with authority, and you will have what are known as oral traditions, where they will change a bit every generation, and people will spend years tracing back those oral traditions to try to find the actual source of it, to find out the unedited, unbroken, like, this is the earliest version. Like Cool Cane, for instance. You know that the Emperor Zero, he's based off of Celtic mythology.
Really?
Yeah, he's based off of Celtic mythology, and they kind of glossed over him in the lore, and just decided he didn't exist. Emperor Zero didn't exist. Michael Kirkbride brought him back in the Acurian heresy and said that Talos killed him. And then made up the cult out of guilt. But yeah, it's like in his bid for power, Talos killed his own mentor. It's like, oopsie.
Yeah, Talos, the power-hungry asshole of a general.
And I actually think the Acurian heresy is that level of contradiction. It's like, plot twist, everything you knew was fucking wrong. I'm fine with that. I am 100% okay with that.
Yeah, that actually fleshes out. It makes, I should say, it makes it a bit more human,
Yes.
Makes it a bit more real.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, here's this legendary level kind of a hero god, and then you read about this in this kind of realistic way that no, he was a fucking dipshit.
Yeah. And that's the way most people who rise to power are. What kind of person do you have to be to try to aspire to that, why can't you just be satisfied with with domination over Cyrodiil. Why aren't you satisfied? Why are you trying to conquer the whole world? And in asking those questions, you get an insight into that person's character. And, what kind of sacrifices need to be made in order to, have the Legion as it is. So. Oof. Okay, that happened. But yeah. In general, there is a lot of there are a lot of stories about people who start out with noble intentions and they lose themselves to power, and they kind of go crazy, and it makes sense. So yeah, you said it was humanizing, and I would agree with you.
Yeah, it brings life, to the overall story, to read about different, very significant historical characters in the lore being, like complete douchebags when the legends about them say, no, they were complete saints.
Yeah, because history is written by the victors, and that's where the unreliable narrator gains traction, is because we want to be able to, people want to be able to say with authority that this in the story is true or that in the story is true. And then you have naysayers who are going, well, no, it's actually, all a lie because of this, and my interpretation is that. And they use it to justify the idea that you don't need to have a cohesive story and that anyone's views could be valid. But I argue that because those things could be true, it creates the need for a cohesive narrative even more. That is where you find value in the story is, all those possibilities, they converge into one truth. And there's this one, it's a Japanese, it's not a cartoon, it's a one of those little, they call them visual novels, but I find most of them repugnant. But there's one that's really good. It's Umineko, and it's a series about identifying truth, separating truth from lies. And I've seen a lot of those. It just, a lot of the arguments that are made in Umineko really resonate with the way the Elderscrolls lore community argues about it. I think how did history perceive this? And if you have no witnesses to this event who are alive, and you conjure up a ghost to try to tell us what actually happened, you realize that ghost is lying, right? It's all a figment of your imagination. Like you're making this shit up. And
yeah,
and so yeah, I think that stories have value because they're told a certain way, and when you it just occurred to me, art galleries, snooty, like that with constantly their nose constantly being pressed upward like this, people who are like, the piece of art has whatever you believe it is. That it is up to personal interpretation which has the value of this art piece. It may be a urinal that has been placed on a giant platter, but it has value in the artistic because, and if you cannot tell, well, then you are clearly uncultured.
Oh my god.
Yes, that's what came to mind in my head. Yeah.
Well, since you mentioned something about the lore, about the truth being somewhere in the middle of converging myths in the lore. Since you mentioned that, would you be, say, okay if, say, reboot or retcon of the lore, we were told the truth about the lore with a game being focused around in the past,
Yeah.
You know, like, for instance, you help Tiber Septim as a kind of a small-time lieutenant, and you deal with him and do missions for him and see exactly what the content of his character is.
Here's the problem with that. It's going to fall into Elder Scrolls Legends territory where you retake the Imperial City and wield Goldbrand, and then suddenly you are the hero instead of Mead. You know, the warlord Titus Mead.
Yeah.
That's I would be okay with what you're doing, what you're saying in concept, but we all know where it's going. Like, don't you know, Tiber Septim wasn't actually the legendary hero? It was you! It was you all along!
Yeah. I just realized that, yeah, that's completely true.
Shit. Nothing is true, yeah. Shit, yeah. You asked, when does that happen? Oh, you need to play the card game, Elder Scrolls Legends. That way, you too can wield Goldbrand and be killed by a woman with an open shirt. Let's see. Who turns into a dude in armor when she dies. Alright, let's see. That
kind of actually reminds me, they actually tell the story of Elder Scrolls Legends as if it's actually happened, you know, the event of retaking the Imperial City happened real far back in the past. So I have to wonder, what era is the narrator in?
Yeah. I mean, I recall I'm trying to remember the exact words. I recall the story of the recovery of the battle spire, as it was told to me from the son of old Khmer, or something like that, you know? It's, that's not the first time they've done that. Like, who's telling the story of the recovery of the battle spire so many years ago, you know?
Yeah. But then again, the reason I wonder this is because I think it will have some kind of impact that what time period the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be in.
Okay. Don't you know it's going to be 5th era when the Numidium comes back. Can't say that with a straight face. All right.
I would lose my shit if they actually did that.
No. I'm actually gonna pull this up right now. Hold on. So we've got. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Okay, yes. I think it's right here. Yeah.
Oh, Smith.
Yeah.
If you could change one thing in the Elder Scrolls lore, what would it be?
All right. Here we go. So what we've got here is, I want you just to imagine her face as the Numidium, okay?
Okay. There's no sound.
After 10,000 years, I'm free. It's time to conquer Earth. And then this will be Azura.
Recruit a team of teenagers with attitudes.
And then what we'll do right here. Hold on. Okay, the Akulikon standing up. That's what we'll do. Okay? That's exactly what we'll do. But yes, that is exactly how you represent the Michael Kirkbride's coda. So. Someone said, did you notice how the Power Rangers theme is metal as fuck? Hold on.
Who here hasn't?
No, there's only one answer to metal, and most people don't understand the reality of metal and where it comes from. Tastes so good.
Oh
Okay.
So Smith Productions asked if you could change one thing in the Elderscrolls lore, what would that be?
I mean, it comes down to, is it the lore or the games? Because the lore, I don't have problems with it before Arena, you know? Like, I think my problems with the lore are my problems with the gameplay. And I think that there's a reason to this, because the lore serves the gameplay. I would say, if I had to go just one thing and one thing only, it would be the butchering of the Nords in Skyrim. I'd want their culture to be more representative of what earlier Elder Scrolls games showed.
Well, I want my Colovians and my Nibonese.
Yes. Well, all of Oblivion was a mess. I mean, is that the Imperial City? That little ring? The biggest city in the world? That's like half the size of Mournhold?
Yep.
Yeah. But in addition, we've got, what was it? Oh, shoot.
And speaking of the world space,
Imperial Navy. Sorry, it came to me. The Imperial Navy. Like, did you know that the river going out from the Imperial City can't like, it actually gets to a level where a boat couldn't get through it. Like, it gets that shallow in one point. It's like, wait, what? Tomorrow you sail for the kingdom of Daggerfall. Like, yeah, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what I was going to say here, that the world space in Oblivion, when you look at it, is this really this thing supposed to be the trade capital of an entire continental spanning empire? I mean, look at it. It's mostly empty, full of ruined forts and barely sizable cities.
Yeah, no, I agree completely.
It's like when I personally imagined Cyrodiil while I was still playing Morrowind, I felt like it would be like this whole metropolitan, completely, really densely packed province with cities all over the place. But the reality of it is like a couple of cities in a couple of corners around the map, and then everything else is just fucking ruins.
Yeah, no, I would agree. There should be villages, there should be towns, there should be, so much more than there was. And I don't think there's any way to really reconcile that within the space that we were given, which is why, again, whenever I do some, I always, you have to know that it's quote unquote representative of a larger space within the story, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. Like, this just, it could not exist as it was. So what they did is they created a huge adventuring space, and they plopped in some counties, which are city-states. That's all they are. Like, the counties are teeny little city-states. And there's no supporting infrastructure, nothing like that, so.
Someone just said Morrowind was the best represented province. No, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Go tell us about that.
Well, the way Morrowind wasn't the best represented province is because you're confined to the small island of Vardenfell.
Yep.
If you want a good example of the culture around Morrowind and, the infrastructure, Morrowind doesn't really have any. It has most of the quote-unquote cities in Morrowind, they're very small.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have much area in terms of square miles. They're like teeny tiny little villages.
Yeah. No, I agree completely.
But Vivek is good in this sense because the architecture is kind of unique. It's more vertical than, flat.
Yeah.
It's built upward. It's not built, in every direction.
Look at the size of the cantons in Elderscrolls Online versus the ones that are being constructed in ESO. The ones being constructed in ESO versus the ones that are in Morrowind. It's hilarious. They're using the same height map. What? But no, Vivek was lazy. I'm sorry. It's copy pasted. Like it could be a temple, but there's a guy who's working on a mod right now. It's called Ordinator, and whenever he works on it, you can see him building the inside of the cantons where there's like a door, a door, a door, a door. You know, like this person's house, that person's house, that person's house. You know, it's quote unquote quarters. You know, and they rent their quarters inside of the cantons, and so there's literally like they built the entire thing hollow, and then like the inside like every little space is accounted for as either someone's quarters or something, because otherwise it is not a city.
Yeah, the way when you spoke about the cantons in ESO, when I looked at you being on the outside of the canton and then suddenly being inside, I was suddenly reminded of the small clown car joke.
Yes. Just disconnected space.
Yeah, it's like no way there's this much space in this tiny little box.
Outlander mod, possibly Outlander. Yeah, that could be it. Yeah, it is the Outlander mod. Thank you for correcting me. Let's see. Yeah, Arena cities actually felt like cities. Daggerfall cities actually... No. Arena cities felt like towns done properly. And Daggerfall cities felt like cities.
Yeah, Daggerfall cities, they were actual city-states.
Yeah.
They had a active ruler, and every single amenity that a city should have. They had the major cities. They had temples, stores littered all over the place. They had something that resembled an active economy and an active society.
Yeah.
But when you get right down to it, that was pretty much very shallow, surface level.
Yes.
But
yes.
But it gives a convincing illusion.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely.
And yes, Daggerfall had banks. Yes, indeed, someone said that.
Yes, it had banks. You'd be like the regional rulers actually hating each other lent so much to the game. And then banks and loans and if they had just expanded on any one of those systems and made them more fleshed out, I would have loved it. I would have absolutely loved it.
Yeah, same here. Being involved in the politics of one city would basically ruin your chances at getting in bed with the politics of another city.
Yeah.
That would have been perfect.
Yeah, instead it just sets you back a little bit, and it's interesting. But someone asked, do you know a good place to get a PC? I would say that the what do you call it? The politics of Now I really don't know what to say about this. There's there really isn't much to say other than I got distracted by something and the thought just went right out the window. So, going back over to the banks, I love the idea that you can take out a loan. If you default on that loan, it ruins your regional reputation. Can't use the banking system until you paid back the loan. I just think that they should have sent debt collectors after you, maybe bounty hunters, people like that. So if you defaulted on a loan and went to another kingdom, then you'd be attacked by bounty hunters, you know, in your new home in a different kingdom. Like, my point is, there are so many things you can do. And, yeah, it's just, you know, I don't know. Just, there's so much you could do with it, so. All right. Moving on. Let's see here. Marwyn introduces a bank. Default on a loan, they'll send Fargoth after you. Unfortunately, let's see, ordinators probably. Not buoyant armigers. Imagine if the banking system was actually related to the living gods in some way, like or one of the houses, the great houses, House of Lalu probably. But you know, you think about the different factions that could have been, you know, created or used, and it doesn't lend itself well to what Morrowind is just explore. Period. That's what it is. They want you to explore, they want you to loot, they want you to go do quests. You know, repeat the process. So
yeah, it would have actually been interesting if there were banks, you know, like you said, in Morrowind connected to House Halalu, and if you piss them off, default on a loan or anything like that, they'll send the Morak Tong after you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because the Morak Tong, it is a government-sanctioned guild in Morrowind, according to the lore.
Yes.
But in the actual game, it's hardly ever seen, I don't think.
Yeah, well, other than you killing people and then showing off your writ to the guards, you don't, you know, there's no real depth to it. They add a little bit of flavor text, as in someone did this, which pissed off, you know, so-and-so, therefore you're going to kill so-and-so. And other than that, there really isn't any depth to it. But yeah, we've got so many factions that weren't expanded on. I've been playing Morrowind Rebirth, and they added buoyant armigers to certain areas, and they added this, you know, and that, whereas they were just like a passing reference in other parts of the game, you know. It just shows that you could really, you could fix quite a bit of it, you know, if they had spent the time on those systems. But instead, they focused almost exclusively on gameplay, and then the lore, again, was written after the fact to explain the gameplay, instead of the two going hand in hand, which is really what you're supposed to do. So.
Yeah, that actually does a very big disservice to the series as a whole, because if you're using lore as a method to justify your content in the game and game mechanics, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
They should be complementary. They shouldn't be, you know, like being like a crutch.
Yeah. Oh, you can make good gameplay and have good story. Witcher 3 proves that.
Yes, exactly. Someone said here they wouldn't hire Zarek to write their lore because he isn't a lore beard like Shik.
I know, right? But don't worry, because if we sacrifice a mud crab to Kine, then we don't have to worry about any dropped frames. Yeah.
You just had to mention that, didn't you?
Of course I did. So let's talk about, because we were getting into reboots and how they would apply to you know, the Elderscrolls, and let's look at J.J. Abrams for a second, because, you know, like, he rebooted Star Trek. How do you feel about that?
Personally, I don't care because I never really watched Star Trek.
Okay. Well, I was always more of a Star Wars fan than a Star Trek fan, but I kind of like both, and quite a few of my family members were Star Trek fans, so you know how that works. I've known quite a few people who were also Star Trek fans, And then J.J. Abrams said, "Hey, you know that whole continuity that you grew up and got to know about? That doesn't exist." So.
Oh yeah, I remember now. There was this huge fucking uproar that they did this whole time travel thing, and they basically just deleted a continuity from existence.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Now, I think that otherwise, Star Trek is... I mean, it's... The problem with Star Trek now is that they retreaded Star Wars Episode 1... Episode 4 perfectly with the first one. Then the second one, they repeated with... what do you call it? They repeated The Wrath of Khan, the second Star Trek movie, with the second Star Trek movie. And you just take a moment and think about that. It's like, wait a second. Did you just use the second new Star Trek movie to retread the first second Star Trek movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so reboots as a concept are, they have the potential to be really good. Yeah, they have the potential to correct problems with the old ones, modernize things, and in general make the series better. Problem is that they will never do that. Not under the current system. They will never do service to the old material whilst creating new material. I can think of one really good reboot, and that was Doom. Have you had the chance to play the new Doom?
I've had a chance to play it. I tried it at my friend's place. I haven't had the heart to actually buy it just yet because it's not on sale.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually liked what I tried.
Okay, well...
I liked it a lot.
It uses the J.J. Abrams style of reboot, where it's like, this is brand new, but we're going to make references to the old one and say that, the old one kind of still happened. Kind of like, they pulled a Star Trek. But they did it properly, where, they focused on everything that needed to be focused on, and they did service to the original material. So.
Yeah, the way I've heard Doom doing a bit of a service to the original material or the material in the past is the way they describe the Doom Marine in, those narration entries that you can find in Hell.
Mm-hmm. The Doom Slayer, yes.
Yeah, they describe things found in Hexen, for instance.
Yeah.
And the other earlier games. So that's a kind of a... How should I put it? It's the good kind of reboot, so it doesn't invalidate all the previous content, but it also makes it this is fresh, this is new. The old content still exists, but it's not all that relevant to the current events.
Exactly. No, I agree completely. All right, so yeah. That's pretty much it, though, is reboots are a great thing for newcomers who don't need to familiarize themselves with everything since the 70s, like Star Wars, but... old fans are generally going to be pissed off. It really depends on how you do it, because if you're true to the original material, then people aren't going to get pissed off. However, a lot of new people, really, they got into Battlestar Galactica, they're like, this is cool, it's dark, it's edgy, it speaks to me. I really like this Battlestar Galactica. And I was like, what the fuck did you do to Baltar? Why is Baltar a little snivelly little nerd? What did you do? No, you have to understand. Baltar is an old man with a gray. You want someone who's a gray beard. That's freaking Baltar there. He's got a gray beard, and he goes, "Send the base stars to attack the Galactica immediately." As you command, Lord Baltar. He was a comic book villain, and he was done well. The new Baltar is, again, a snivelly little nerd that I give zero shits about.
Yeah, the way you can do reboots, you can do them well, or you can do them in a way that's it's serviceable, but it could be better.
Yeah.
Or you can do them so poorly that the old your old fan base, they will be completely alienated, and the new people coming in, they won't understand a goddamn thing that you're trying to say because you're making references to material that's that they are not familiar with at all.
Yeah. No, I think that reboots can be done extremely well, and they can also be done in a way that disservices the original material. And I think that Battlestar Galactica, pissed me off because I was there for the original series. So, yeah. Alright.
Yermer King. Has anyone actually not used fast travel in Arena?
It's impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. You would actually have to take real-time weeks.
No. You don't understand. The game, I found out later, but I looked into this. And if we go over to the map here, you can see that if you click over here, you notice that I'm still in Riverhold. Doesn't matter how far I go out, I'll still be in Riverhold, because Riverhold is a node. And like it's an infinite world node. And then if I fast travel here, then I'll be in this node. And the world will go infinite in that direction. The problem with the nodes is that if you go out too far to where the memory address overlaps, it'll corrupt your save file and break. So, if you try to go out for over like maybe I want to say like 3 or 4 hours in one direction, you'll break the game. It's systemically broken. And that's why I'm really excited for OpenTS Arena, because OpenTS Arena has the potential to not only connect the nodes, but also stop that breaking from happening. So,
That's actually really interesting. I actually didn't know that this was a thing in Arena, vanilla Arena.
I didn't know that it was a thing either until I looked it up. But yeah, each node of like here's an example. If we go out here and we go to Skyrim and we were to go to Riverwood. Riverwood is its own node. It doesn't matter how many weeks you were to travel west, you would not get to Oakwood ever. You could never go north to Whiterun. It just wouldn't happen. So, let's travel to Riverwood right now.
Is this a thing in Daggerfall as well?
No. Daggerfall actually has a cohesive open world. But the problem with Daggerfall is that each pip on the map, each pixel on the map, represents like 8 or 9 screens in either direction. So you could literally pass by a town and never know you did it. That's why Daggerfall Unity excites me, because number one, we can increase the speed of your travel outside of towns via a fast travel, actually get you from point A to point B faster. But also, expand your view distance so you can see cities on the horizon. Yeah, that's where you can fix that stuff. So, all right, we're currently in Riverwood. Those poor sods don't even have a wall. All right, let's see here.
Arena's Riverwood is basically made out of stone completely.
Yeah, Riverwood is here. We're going to go to the Palace of Riverwood real quick. We're going to go over to the Palace. Hold on. It should be over in this direction. If we just trot on over there. And I did this on my earlier playthrough, and I will go back to that playthrough pretty soon. I just wanted to play a thief for no reason other than to have the guy go stop thief. Alright, so this is the gate to the Palace. And there we go. The Palace is closed for the night. Damn it. Oh, well, time to get my ass kicked. Wait, you can't camp here. Well, I'm kind of screwed then. Well, either way. My point is that, the cities were reasonably sized in Arena, and they were real city size in Daggerfall. And then Morrowind made these little teeny settlements, which if I'm playing Morrowind Rebirth, I'm okay with. It's kind of funny. So.
Yeah, Morrowind cities, or quote-unquote cities, they also feel a bit more alive because they focus more on the overall character of the city. Setting up a very quote-unquote unique look to it.
Yes, exactly. So, and there are people who, again, they prefer the unique look in each city. The idea that they could be immersed. That immersion is, it comes from the cinematic storytelling, from the idea that you are being placed in that world. And I've always been controlling a character. I've never been in the world. I don't know where that idea comes from. It has never been mine. So, that is something. Okay. Let's see here. Camp in the inn room.
Doom Raider just said something interesting that reminded me of something. What do you think about the dumbing down of the magic system since Morrowind?
Well, I think that it has less to do with the fact that they want to dumb it down and more along the lines of it's not their priority. I think that they offloaded a lot of the magic stuff to the, what do you call it? They offloaded a lot of the magic to... Oh, I'm trying to... get the
shouts.
Shouts. Thank you. The powers and magic in general. They offloaded that onto the shouts. They want you to be shouting. Period. That's what they.
So you're saying that magic dropped out of their field of vision in terms of focus, and they instead focused on the new gimmick.
Yes, the new gimmick. Exactly. Yep.
Someone just said, "Thank God for mods." Yeah, that's why mods exist, because developers can make stupid decisions.
But you'd be surprised how much the Fallout 4 modding community is limited by the system in Fallout 4, the perks system.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, the perk system has kind of ruined quite a bit. All right, going into the palace here. By the way, out of all the palaces in Skyrim, for whatever reason, this one has like red guard looking guards. Riverwood. I've never figured out why, but
those very Middle Eastern looking turbans.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, this is the king of Riverwood, and we talked to him. Welcome to Riverwood. Please treat yourself to our village's many pleasures. Our taverns, particular delight, the best mutton pie in the province. Now I regret I must dismiss you. So he has nothing to say for he has no quest or anything right now, but that's who you'd talk to. If you want to get a bunch of guards to kill you, you just go off in either direction, just to kind of waltz through the hallways, and then guards will start coming after you and try to kill you.
Now, everyone, please absorb the memory of that king that you just saw in Riverwood.
Yes. And if we go over here and we go to Skyrim, and we could probably go over to Markarth, which is over here, right under Dragon Bridge. And then, of course, you got we have the city-state of Snowhawk, and, Amberguard. Amberguard's pretty good. Let's see, Solitude, Stone Halls, Creek, Amel. Of course, Amel has its own... keep in mind, they converted these to forts in Skyrim. They said, oh, this is a teeny tiny little fort. Let's show you what Fort Stonehawk looks like, shall we?
I think Fort Amel is actually the only place in Skyrim that actually matches the geographic location in Arena.
No,
the rest are in completely wrong places.
Yeah. But this is Snowhawk. I'm just going over the map really quick, so you can see, the city-state of Snowhawk. So that gives
The
you an
Armor
idea.
King just said something very interesting. Skyrim felt like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, that's absolutely true. Oh well. But to go over the question one more time. Shit, there's an orc in here. There we go. Orc's dead. As I was saying, Game of Thrones makes sense to use similar influences. No, it's not that. It's the Game of Thrones novels came out a couple of years before Skyrim, and they were the basis of quite a bit of their influence. They were during the early development of Skyrim. They were asked to make a Game of Thrones game, and they turned down the offer to work on the what is it called? The Skyrim, to continue work on Skyrim. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Like the idea that first they take influence from the novels, and then they turn down a offer to work on that. Song of Fire and Ice actually started in '96. Okie dokie, that's fine. No, I was thinking about the one that really made it popular. Damn, forgot what it was. But yeah, I don't know. I just you're absolutely right, by the way. Either way, people say, "Oh well, how could Skyrim be based on Game of Thrones if Game of Thrones, was made later?" That's how. Novels that came out earlier.
Yeah, the Civil War, it really, really feels like the kind of civil war that you have in Westeros, like the Battle of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah. Well, at least the way the Battle of the Seven Kingdoms was originally referenced, because it didn't turn out that way as the series went on.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. If you start reading the Song of Fire or Ice and Fire, they start getting into very much. How do I put this? It becomes more about the characters visiting these unique locations, and these locations, if you actually trace them back, oh, this one's based off Venice. Oh, this one's based off, this place in Europe or that place in Europe. Yeah, you can really see just where he was drawing it from, period.
Yeah.
Yes. Bethesda Game of Thrones game will have a dialogue wheel of choices: bribe, kill, sex, and yes. It's hilarious.
Well, if that's the case, we all know that what everyone will be using the game for then.
Yeah. So, my point here, though, is reboots, probably not. I don't trust Bethesda, and it's not that I hate them. It's that you look at the design direction, and the design direction I'm hoping for isn't the design direction I know they're going to go, which is why when I did my ideal Elderscrolls series, I always said it's never going to happen.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you gotta face reality. Bethesda's design direction, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in terms of trust in their competency.
I think that what it clearly comes down to is Arena is Arena, Daggerfall is Daggerfall, Oblivion, Morrowind is Morrowind, Oblivion is Oblivion, Skyrim is Skyrim. You can't take them as a series, and you can't say that they ruined this or that. You can't say that they changed this or that, because each entry in the series is like an island unto itself, with its own design direction, with its own storyline decisions, which were made independently of the creative minds of the other entries in the franchise. There is a canon storyline, yes, but does it matter? No, not really.
Yeah. And that also bugs me in a really big way, that they actually have this disconnect between the new additions to the series, that they don't even try to go in the, like connecting the dots between them.
Yeah. And
Instead it's left up to, like huge lore nerds like myself, like independently, each individual person has to connect the dots.
Yeah, each game being a universe unto itself is more likely than anything else. Whether that's true or not, I'll leave that up to your own personal interpretation, because it doesn't actually matter at the end of the day. I can talk about the virtues of my favorite Elder Scrolls game of the week, and that might not, if someone will say, but in Skyrim they say that this, and I may not opt to care.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, Bethesda doesn't really care about its lore. It doesn't really care about its, the characters it writes. It only cares about that, okay, we get to pump out another game, and our bottom line of, profits, it's satisfied. That's basically all it cares about at the end of the day.
I had a discussion about Nintendo before where people told me it's not scummy, it's business, as if business couldn't be scummy.
Yeah,
like that's just the hilarity of it. It's just that business is business, Yeah, and when you sacrifice artistic vision for business, then you've definitely gone down the route of the professional.
Yep. Like an artist is not really a professional until they begin to have, like these quotas based on simple numbers.
Yeah. No, you have to have a crafting system, because every game these days has a crafting system.
Yeah. As cynical as it is to actually say it, it's true.
No, unfortunately, cynical is my reality right now. If someone said, "Well, you sound like a skeptic," you're confusing a skeptic and a cynic. I am skeptical of very little. I believe in the world's worst aspects. You tell me that the world's going to end soon. I will be skeptical about that, because I think that I am cynical about their ability to actually end it if they wanted to. You see what I'm saying? It's like, I don't prescribe that much competence to those who would orchestrate our destruction. So, yeah, that's where it really comes down to. All right. Well, I think that's about it. So the real answer is reboot. No, don't reboot it. But definitely, I would be super inspired if someone would go and start working on an Elder Scrolls inspired this, or an Elder Scrolls inspired that. Make something that's legally distinct, that is not part of the Elder Scrolls, but can beat them at their own game. And I'm not talking about a better Skyrim. I'm talking about like a better Arena, a better Daggerfall, a better Morrowind, one of those older games. Like, set your expectations properly and beat them at it. And create something, because there's the market for retro games is huge. And, while you need to spend millions of dollars to build a Skyrim, one of the older games can be beat. And then you can build off that foundation to build a better Skyrim, I think.
Yep.
So I would
create a spiritual successor.
Yeah. Someone asked, whatever happened to Daggerfall Unity? That is a very good question. They actually finished their questing system. The main quest is now more or less completable at this point.
It is?
Yeah, the side quests, not so much. The side quests have independent things, but the main quest, from what I hear, as of the Vengeance update, which we'll go over to here, from the Vengeance update, like he has a story about that. By the way, this is the creator of Daggerfall Unity. I'll go ahead and copy his what you might call it into the thing here, and you can go ahead and check that out. So that is the Daggerfall Unity guy, and you can see that as of 20 hours ago, he asked people to share his information about his stuff. He also retweeted that OpenTS Arena version 0.5 has been released, so he has a video on that. So you want an open sourced Elderscrolls 1, this guy's working on it. And then like some guy made custom models and things, so on and so forth. Like Daggerfall Unity just keeps getting better. Let's really quick smidgen over here and look at this video somebody made. Looks like this is in Daggerfall Unity. The guy is messing around with it. Like these are mods for Daggerfall Unity, like the bookcases and stuff. You can, there's quite a bit of stuff going on here, and just very slowly it's being enhanced. So, you can see the lighting effects and things like that. And that isn't the work of the engine creator. That is all the work of the modders, because he has made it clear that this is going to be an open modding framework. And you can see in the distance the rolling hills and stuff like that. He like they're working on replacing the models for like the water fountains and stuff like that. So it just keeps going on and on and on. And these are all mods. So yeah, you're asking what's the ETA? There's no ETA. It's being worked on actively, but at the same time, the developers are, the contributors to the project are doing what they want and working on it at their pace. So, if you're asking, can I hop into it, next Monday? Probably not. If you're asking, can you hop into it next month? Well, maybe, but the guy is making huge leaps and bounds in progress. A year ago, I would have said this is like 5 years off, and he's already finished the main quest pretty much. So, yeah. Would it be possible to mod the characters into 3D? Of course, it would be possible, but that you have to leave that up to a modeler, so someone who actually has that.
Yeah, it actually does have 3D models already being worked for it. Like some of the fountains in vanilla Daggerfall, they were like sprites, 2-dimensional, and now they are 3-dimensional.
Yeah. That's pretty much it, though. There really isn't much else to say about this. Daggerfall Unity is something that's being worked on. Morrowind, what do you call it? OpenMW is still being worked on. TS3MP is still being worked on. I've been doing some TS3MP runs. John hopped on for one of our TS3MP sessions, our original test session. How do you feel about the TS3MP as it is right now?
I fucking love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore it. It's the best kind of fun I've ever had playing a RPG with other people. I would actually go on to say that it's several magnitudes better than Elder Scrolls Online, even in its unfinished state.
Yeah, I agree, and that's because it's the sandbox designed to be not designed, but rather modified to be played with others, and that's what people want. Is they want a sandbox MMO. The problem is that other people want a World of Warcraft, a theme park, and so the disconnect between those two sets of people and the massive success of World of Warcraft says it has to be that way.
Someone here says, why not both action RPG?
Yeah. No, if you ever go online with Neverwinter Nights, the server browser's broken because the master server's down, but there are tons of specific servers you can go to in Neverwinter Nights, and they range from action, just people going around killing each other, to actual RPGs where, it's full-on role-playing sessions, It really depends on the server and the community you go see. There's someone who said, well, there's no future in this, there's no potential in this, in the Elderscrolls 3 multiplayer, and that's because they were judging it based on, jumping into a multiplayer game and going and getting a competitive advantage against other players, and going and creating a custom spell of super destruction and nuking everybody. And when you try to do that on a server, you're considered an exploiter. Oh, you're kicked and banned. Oh, no. You see, his way of playing isn't the same as a traditional RPG player's way of playing. And, the disconnect. Everyone has their own way of playing, and ultimately, if you're going to play with others, you have to establish a conforming way to play. Ever heard of co-op? Yeah, exactly. Question mark. You'd be surprised how many people don't care about co-op. And that's
some people go all the way to just when it comes to multiplayer RPGs that are act like sandboxes. People do away with the RPG kind of thing and just do metagaming and basically just break the whole experience for everyone.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And that's why you asked, there's no potential. Like the guy said, there's no potential in this. What he actually meant is there's no potential in it for him. And most likely all of the public servers will have to get changed with mods to make them more ESO-like, more theme park-like. Whereas a game with, to have a more traditional Elder Scrolls 3 experience, you would need to have it on a private server. And I think that's fine. It's kind of like Starbound. Why don't... people ask me, why don't you... if you really like Starbound so much, why don't you have a public server? And my answer is always, I do not have the mods to properly protect my content. If I made a public server, people just go around wrecking shit all the time. And they grief things. And so, it's... yeah, exactly. That's what it comes down to. All right. Well, I think that's about it. As somebody asked, any tips on making a game? And the answer is very much look at... well, aside from go to school for it, because that's the most obvious solution, the answer is never, ever confuse your prototype with the finished product. Like, people will... I've had people come to me and they show me this prototype, and I said, this is a really good tech demo for, what you've got. And he's like, tech demo? This is the finished game. I'm going to put it on Greenlight. And, I don't have the heart to tell him that your shit is shit. But, you have a really good design concept. Now you need to get an artist in on the project who can actually work on it. You need to license some music and sound and stuff like that. And I don't see them doing that, So, it's, don't get ahead of yourself. Start with something simple, something easy, and then work your way up. And, there are... one guy got offended when I said his pixel art was bad and he should just... I saw his actual... On a piece of paper, he showed me the drawings he did, the concept art for it, and I said, scan that and put that into the game. He's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want it to be pixel art. I'm like, your pixel art is shit, but your sketched art is good. Put your sketched art into the game. And he refused to do that, and then he went ahead and put his thing on Greenlight, got laughed off Greenlight. He couldn't take the negative criticism, by the way. He actually took his shit down, right after, and deleted his profile and everything. He set it to private. So
Yeah, that is also a very good point to say to prospecting game developers. When you go into art, you need to be able to take criticism
yes,
properly.
no. What it comes down to, if you actually go to an art class, and I'm not talking about a namby-pamby little, university. When I say little university, I mean literally like these universities that in, say, California where they coddle people. I'm talking about like an actual art school. When you go there, they will pin your work up on the wall and they will let everyone tear into it. They will give, it's a free critiquing session where everyone gets to give you criticism. And you, as the person who made it, are supposed to actually take down their criticisms and implement it into your next version of the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, someone asked, how do you start getting the money to hire people? Because you don't hire them. You do a work contract with them where they get a percentage of the money, where they raise their profile, where you might have to pay them out of your own pocket in bits and pieces. You'd be surprised. Hobbies are expensive, by the way. If you ever want to get into a model railroad club and you want to, buy your own little electronic locomotives that go on the track, you're going to be spending a few $100s a piece. And so if you're unemployed and you're looking to make a video game, maybe go get a job first. I'm just saying, like that might be a problem. I found that supporting hobbies is very expensive, and you have to make sacrifices in your life one way or the other. And my personal hobbies, as far as like models and stuff like that, those I went down to like 1% of acquisition when I got married, because that's just how it works. So yeah.
Yeah, coming down to this, hobbies being expensive, I completely agree with that, because my little pet project that I've been working on, the video game that I've talked to you about, I've spent almost 4 years working on it and financing the development. I've sank 6,000 euros from my own pocket into the development of that game.
Yeah.
So it's not cheap. And if you're trying to be cheap, taking shortcuts and then putting it on a public forum, for an example, Greenlight, you'll be laughed out of there if you use only stock assets from the Unity store or some shit like that.
No, it used to be people could get away with stock assets because it hadn't become publicized. But when people try to take advantage of stock assets, now there is a group of people that make it their, not their job, but their hobby to go around and say, this is from this is from that is from that. And when they're used well, like Thomas Was Alone, for instance, nobody notices. Nobody notices when you use assets well and, in amongst all, actual commissioned assets. And you just, the best way to literally ask the author or Thomas Is Alone, have you ever used any stock assets from pre-bought packs? He will say yes, and you to actually look at the game, you won't notice it. Just saying.
Yeah. It has its own unique aesthetic as well. On top of that. The stock assets, the author of that game used these stock assets as a method to cut back the time it took to produce the game, instead of making the assets the only thing in the game.
Exactly. Also, assets can be built upon, which is something people don't realize. They think that the asset has to be the end product. All right, DJ Gamer asks, wouldn't the job take up the time it's needed to work on the game? Well, that depends on what your personal life is like. Welcome to work-life balance. If you are in a high demand sales job where you're working 12 hours a day, which I did for a little while, and then no, it would be impossible to work on your personal projects. I think I got a YouTube video up once every 3 months during that time, when I was working my high demand job. But it really depends on what you're doing. So, work-life balance includes hobbies. It just depends. So.
Yeah, if you're in a job where you're living from paycheck to paycheck, it will be almost impossible to squeeze into your schedule times for hobbies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely true. But Hearthstone was made by Unity. That's or made in Unity, I should say. Yes, Unity is not a bad engine. It just gets a bad rap because everyone who pays. Everyone who pays for the Unity license, they don't have this Made with Unity logo on. If you get the free version of Unity, then it says Made with Unity. So they're advertising on the free people stuff. And
it's been stigmatized because of all of the shitty software developers that cheap out even on the software they make it on.
By the way, did you know that Yandere Simulator, that Weeb game, they're moving to their C#, and they're moving away from all of the Java and stuff like that. Like all of they've basically, he got a professional software developer on his project finally. And so the professional software developer is just like, yeah, we're moving away from those systems now. It's still made in Unity, but it's made in Unity correctly, which is why it actually works. It's being done in C#. There's a reason why Minecraft is so bad. What's hilarious is that what makes Minecraft so moddable is the fact that it's in Java. And when you make it good, when you make it good, you also remove that moddability. So in other words, the new and improved version of Minecraft is not going to have the same problems as it's not going to have the same moddability. So you're going to have to choose. Do you want this crappy do you want this crappy version made in Java that uses up huge chunks of your system resources and it gets crash happy under certain circumstances that can be modded? Or do you want to have a version that can't be modded but is
stable as all hell?
Yeah, exactly. Extremely stable, where you can just build a world as big as you want and it doesn't matter. So yeah, it's freaking hilarious. And you know what? Kind of like regular Skyrim versus the special edition. Yes. Do you want the script extender, or do you want it to not crash as much? Yeah.
Yeah.
Shit. Oh well.